Princess Zyra stood on the balcony of her grand palace, gazing at the twin moons of Zilfar. Their silver glow bathed the capital city in soft light, but she felt no comfort. Tonight, the empire was quiet, not because of peace, but because of fear. Everyone knew the truth now. She was infertile. For the Zilfar Dominion, this was more than a personal tragedy. It was a disaster. Zyra was the only heir of the royal bloodline, the last in a long chain of rulers stretching back thousands of years. Without a successor, the empire would fall into chaos. Rival factions were already preparing to seize power. War was not a possibility, it was a certainty. Her father, Emperor Kairos, had exhausted every option. The best doctors and scientists from across the Dominion had tried to cure her condition, but none had succeeded. Zilfar medical technology was one of the most advanced in the galaxy, yet even they could not reverse her fate. She had been born with a rare genetic defect, something no royal had ever suffered before. And now, because of her, the empire was doomed. A soft chime echoed through her chambers, breaking her thoughts. It was a private communication. Only a few had access to this channel. She turned and activated the holographic screen. The face of an elderly scientist appeared. It was Dr. Varric, one of the most brilliant minds of the Dominion. Princess Zyra. He greeted her, his voice calm yet urgent. I have found something unusual. Zyra narrowed her eyes. Another failed cure. No, he said, shaking his head. Something different. Something beyond our understanding. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Explain. Dr. Varric took a deep breath. We have studied many species across the galaxy. Most of them suffer from reproductive issues at some point in their evolution. But one species stands out. Humans. Zyra frowned. The primitive species from the Sol system. They are not as primitive as we once believed. Varric said. Their medical science is unpredictable, yes, but they have achieved something remarkable. Unlike us, they have solved infertility in ways we never considered. Their biology is highly adaptable, and their methods often succeed where our technology fails. Zyra crossed her arms. And you think they can help me? It is possible, Varric admitted, but their approach is unconventional. They use genetic modification, artificial reproductive methods, and even cellular regeneration. It is risky, but it may be your only chance. The princess turned away from the screen, her mind racing. She had never considered seeking help from another species, especially not humans. The Zilfar viewed them as unpredictable, chaotic, and far too emotional. Yet, they were also known for their resilience. Could they really succeed where the greatest minds of her empire had failed? And if it does not work, she asked quietly. Varric hesitated. Then our people will tear themselves apart. Zyra clenched her fists. She had spent her entire life preparing to rule. She had trained in diplomacy, warfare, and leadership, but none of it mattered if she could not secure the future of her bloodline. She turned back to Varric. Who is the best human scientist in this field? A geneticist named Dr. Alan Carter, Varric replied. He leads a research team on Earth. He has made breakthroughs that even we cannot explain. Zyra exhaled slowly. This was madness. A Zilfar princess traveling to Earth to beg for help from a human. It was unheard of. But she had no choice. Prepare my ship, she ordered. We leave for Earth immediately. Varric bowed his head. As you command, princess. As the transmission ended, Zyra looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, among the stars, was a species that might hold the key to her future. She just had to hope that humanity was as extraordinary as the stories claimed. Princess Zyra sat inside her personal spacecraft, staring at the swirling lights of hyperspace. The journey to Earth would take several days, but her mind refused to rest. Doubt filled her thoughts. Was she making the right decision? For centuries, the Zilfar had looked down on humanity. They were considered unpredictable, too emotional, too reckless. And yet, they had achieved something the Zilfar could not. They had found ways to overcome infertility. If there was even a small chance that humans could help her, she had to take it. She glanced at the control panel. Time until arrival. Her royal guard, Commander Talon, answered without looking up. Less than 12 hours, Your Highness. Syra nodded but said nothing. Talon had not approved of this mission. He was loyal, but like many Zilfar, he believed seeking help from humans was a mistake. Syra knew he would never speak against her decision, but she could sense his disapproval in his cold, formal tone. Once we land, she said, I want a secure perimeter around our location. No unnecessary interactions with the humans. Talon gave a short bow. Understood. The ship continued its journey, and soon, the swirling lights of hyperspace faded. The blue and green planet of Earth came into view. Syra had seen images before, but looking at it with her own eyes was different. Unlike the mechanical cities of Zilfar Prime, Earth had vast oceans, endless forests, and bright city lights that pulsed like stars on the surface. For the first time, she felt a strange sense of curiosity. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere smoothly, guided by automated navigation. As they approached their destination, the human authorities sent a transmission. This is Earth Command to unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted airspace. State your purpose. Dedera activated the communication link. This is Princess Syra of the Zilfar Dominion. I have come to meet with Dr. Alan Carter. A long pause followed. Then a different voice responded. Understood, Princess. You are cleared to land. Welcome to Earth. The spacecraft touched down at a private research facility on the outskirts of a human city. The landing pad was surrounded by security forces, their weapons lowered but ready. Humans did not trust easily, and neither did the Zilfar. Syra stepped out of the ship, her royal guards forming a protective circle around her. A group of human scientists stood nearby, watching her with curiosity and caution. One of them stepped forward, a man with sharp eyes, gray-streaked hair, and an air of quiet confidence. Dr. Alan Carter, Syra said, studying him carefully. He nodded. Princess Syra, welcome to Earth. She appreciated his calmness. There was no unnecessary flattery, no attempt to impress her, just direct, professional respect. You know why I'm here, she said. Carter nodded. Yes. I've read the data your scientists sent. Your condition is rare, but not impossible to solve. Syra's heart skipped a beat. Could it really be that simple? But then Carter continued. However, there are complications. Zilfar biology is different from ours. If we attempt traditional human treatments, they might not work, or worse, they could harm you. Syra straightened. So you believe there is no solution? Carter shook his head. I didn't say that. I believe there is a solution, but it will take time, research, and risks. She appreciated his honesty. Other scientists had promised her miracles, only to fail. Carter was different. He did not offer false hope, but he also did not give up easily. What do you need from me? She asked. Full cooperation, he said. I need access to your genetic data, your medical history, and most importantly, your trust. Syra hesitated. Trust was not something she gave easily. But she had come this far. There was no turning back now. You have it, she said. Carter gave a small smile. Then let's get started. Over the next few days, Syra underwent a series of tests. The human scientists worked tirelessly, analyzing her DNA, comparing it to human biology, and running simulations. Syra was impressed by their dedication. But not everyone was pleased with her presence. One evening, as she rested in her private quarters within the facility, Commander Talon entered, his expression tense. We have a problem, he said. Syra sat up. What is it? Talon hesitated before speaking. We intercepted a communication from Zilfar Prime. The High Council has learned of your actions. They are displeased. Syra's stomach tightened. She had expected resistance, But not this soon. What did they say? They believe your decision to seek human help is an insult to our people. Some factions are calling for your removal as heir. Zara clenched her fists. They would rather let the empire collapse than accept help from humans. Talon lowered his head. For some, pride is more important than survival. Zara exhaled slowly. She had known this mission was dangerous, but now she realized the true extent of the risk. If she failed, she would not just lose her chance at a cure, she could lose everything. But she was not ready to give up. She turned to Talon. Let them talk. Let them threaten. We continue. Talon studied her for a moment, then nodded. As he left, Syra looked out of the window. The human scientists were still working, still searching for a way to save her. They did not care about politics or pride. They only cared about the challenge, the problem to be solved. For the first time in a long while, Syra felt something new. Hope. Inside the human research facility, Princess Styra lay on a medical examination table, surrounded by blinking monitors and advanced scanning equipment. The sterile scent of antiseptics filled the air, and the quiet hum of machines echoed through the room. She had never felt so exposed. Dr. Alan Carter stood beside her, studying a holographic display of her genetic structure. His sharp eyes scanned the data, his fingers tapping quickly on the controls. Beside him, a team of human scientists worked with quiet efficiency, whispering to one another in their own language. "How are you feeling?" Carter asked, his voice calm but professional. "I am fine," Tyra replied, though her body tensed. "This process is unfamiliar to me." Carter nodded. "I understand. But I promise, we will not do anything without your consent." Zara appreciated his words. The Zilfar were used to strict hierarchy. Doctors did not ask for permission. They simply performed their duty. But humans were different. They valued cooperation over blind obedience. Carter gestured toward the display. "We've compared your DNA with various species, including humans. The problem is clear. Your reproductive system lacks a key protein that allows for cell regeneration. Without it, your body cannot create new life." Syra listened carefully. "And you believe humans have a way to fix this?" Carter smiled slightly. "Not just humans. You, Princess." She frowned. "Explain." Carter turned to the display, zooming in on a section of her DNA. "There's something unique about your genetic code. You should have the ability to regenerate this missing protein, but for some reason, it's inactive, almost like a forgotten part of your evolution." Zyra's eyes widened. "Then, it is not a defect." "It may not be," Carter confirmed. "It's possible that your ancestors once had this ability, but over time, it was lost." A spark of hope lit in her chest. If this was true, then her infertility was not a permanent curse. It was a locked door, waiting to be opened. Carter continued. "Humans have dealt with similar problems. Our ancestors had traits we lost, but through science, we've learned how to reactivate them. We've used gene therapy, regenerative medicine, and even artificial means to restore what evolution took away." Zyra sat up slightly. "And you believe you can do the same for me?" Carter nodded. "Yes, but it won't be easy. We need to test how your body reacts to these treatments. Some may work, others may not." She met his gaze. "I will do whatever it takes." Carter studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Then let's begin." The first treatment was simple, a modified protein injection designed to stimulate her dormant genes. The procedure was painless, but the results were slow. Hours passed, then days, with no clear change. Zidera grew impatient. Every morning, Carter would arrive with new data, adjusting the formula, trying again. But the more time passed, the more doubt crept into her mind. One evening, as she sat alone in her private quarters, Commander Talon entered. His expression was tense. "There has been another message from the High Council," he said. Zyra turned toward him, her heart sinking. "What do they say?" "They demand your immediate return. Talon replied. They claim your actions are a disgrace to the royal bloodline. Zira clenched her fists. And if I refuse? Talon hesitated before answering. Then they will declare you unfit to rule. The words hit her like a blade. This was worse than exile. If the council removed her as heir, she would lose all authority. She would have no power to stop the coming war. She took a deep breath. I cannot leave. Not yet. Talon studied her carefully. Are you sure these humans can help you? Zira hesitated for only a moment before nodding. I trust Dr. Carter. He has not given up, and neither will I. Talon sighed but did not argue. Then I will ensure your safety, no matter the cost. Zira felt a rush of gratitude. Talon had been skeptical from the start, but he was still loyal. The next morning, Carter arrived with a new approach. We've been focusing on restoring what was lost, he said. But what if we don't need to? What if your body already has everything it needs, but we're looking in the wrong place? Zira frowned. I do not understand. Carter pulled up a new display. Your immune system is stronger than any species we studied. It repairs damage almost instantly. But it also rejects foreign treatments. What if your body is fighting the very cure we're trying to give you? Zira's eyes widened. Then how do we fix this? Carter's expression turned serious. We trick your body into accepting the treatment. We introduce human DNA, not to replace yours, but to act as a key, a bridge between our biology and yours. Zira hesitated. The idea of human DNA inside her was strange. But if it worked, if it could save her people, then she had no choice. She met Carter's gaze. Let's proceed. The experiment was unlike anything Zira had experienced before. The human scientists worked carefully, crafting a solution that blended their biology with hers. The treatment was delivered through a series of nanite injections, tiny machines programmed to activate her dormant genes. The first few hours passed with no change. Then, pain. Zira gasped, gripping the table as heat spread through her body. Her vision blurred. Her skin felt like it was on fire. Alarms blared, and human doctors rushed to stabilize her. Her system is rejecting it. One of them shouted. Wait, look at the readings, Carter said urgently. Zira could barely hear them through the pain. But then, just as suddenly as it started, the sensation faded. Her breathing slowed. She blinked, feeling different. Carter stared at the monitor, then at her. His eyes were wide with shock. It's working, he whispered. Zira sat up weakly. You mean? Carter turned the display toward her. It showed her cells regenerating at an accelerated rate, something that had never happened before. For the first time, he said, a grin spreading across his face. Your body is healing itself. Zira looked at the screen, barely believing it. The impossible had happened, and humanity had made it possible. Princess Zira sat on the edge of the medical examination table, her breath steady but her heart racing. The air in the lab felt different now, charged with an energy of anticipation. She looked at the holographic screen, where Dr. Carter and his team were studying the latest test results. For the past few days, her body had been changing. The nanite-enhanced human DNA treatment had triggered something deep within her biology, something her own species had thought was lost forever. Your cells are stabilizing, Carter announced, his voice filled with restrained excitement. This is incredible, Princess. Your body isn't rejecting the treatment anymore. It's adapting to it. Zira clenched her fists. Does that mean? Carter nodded. It means your infertility may no longer be permanent. Your body is healing itself, exactly as we hoped. She felt a surge of emotions, relief, hope, and disbelief. For so long, she had believed her condition was unchangeable, that no science in the galaxy could fix what was broken inside her. Yet here she was, proving that belief wrong. One of the younger human scientists, Dr. Mylin, stepped forward. We need to monitor you closely for the next few days. These changes are happening at a rapid pace, and we don't know how your system will respond in the long term. Thyren nodded. I understand. Do whatever is necessary. Carter glanced at her, as if studying more than just the data. How do you feel? Zyra considered the question. For the past few days, she had been experiencing new sensations. Her body felt stronger, more alive. Even the fatigue she had carried for years seemed to be fading. I feel different, she admitted. Lighter, as if a weight I did not know I was carrying was finally lifting. Carter smiled. That's a good sign. Later that evening, Zyra sat in her private quarters within the research facility, gazing out of the window at the human city in the distance. The bright lights of Earth's skyline were unlike anything on Zilfar Prime. There was something chaotic yet beautiful about this world. A knock on the door broke her thoughts. Enter, she said. Commander Talon stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He had been quiet ever since the experiment had begun, watching from the sidelines with skepticism. I heard the human doctor's report, he said, crossing his arms. They believe the treatment is working. Zyra nodded. Yes, we may have found the solution we were searching for. Talon remained silent for a moment before speaking again. The High Council has sent another message. They are demanding that you return immediately. Zyra exhaled. She had expected this. And if I do not? Talon's jaw tightened. There are whispers that certain factions are preparing to declare you unfit to rule. If they succeed, you will be exiled. The throne will fall to someone else. A cold certainty settled over her. She had always known that her people would resist this mission. The Zilfar were proud, unwilling to accept help from outsiders, but she had hoped they would see reason. They would rather let the Dominion collapse into civil war than accept a cure from humans, she asked bitterly. Talon hesitated. Some believe that accepting human assistance is a weakness. They fear that it will make us dependent on them. Zyra shook her head. This is not about dependency. This is about survival. Talon looked at her, his expression softer than before. And do you truly believe these humans can save you? Zyra met his gaze, unwavering. They already have. For the first time, Talon did not argue. Instead, he simply nodded. I will continue to protect you, no matter what the Council decides, he said. A quiet understanding passed between them. Talon was still a warrior of tradition, but his loyalty was to her, not to the politicians on Zilfar Prime. The next morning, Zyra returned to the lab for further tests. Carter and his team worked tirelessly, running scans and collecting data. The results continued to show improvement. Her body was not only stabilizing but thriving. Then something unexpected happened. As Zyra stood in front of the holographic display, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. She reached out, gripping the table for support. Carter was by her side in an instant. Princess, what's wrong? I don't know, she murmured. The room seemed to spin, her vision blurring for a brief moment. One of the scientists rushed forward with a scanner. Her vitals are spiking. Carter looked at the screen. His expression shifted from concern to something else. Fascination. Wait, he muttered, adjusting the display. This isn't just a reaction to the treatment. Something else is happening. Zyra steadied herself, breathing deeply. The dizziness was fading, replaced by a strange warmth spreading through her body. What do you mean? She asked. Carter turned to her, his eyes wide. Your body isn't just healing, Princess. It's evolving. Zyra stared at him in shock. Evolving. Carter nodded. Your genetic structure is adapting at an accelerated rate. It's as if the treatment has awakened something new inside you. Zyra pressed a hand to her chest. She felt it now. This wasn't just a cure. It was something greater. A new future. A new possibility. For the first time in her life, she was no longer just the last hair of a dying bloodline. She was something more. Something stronger. And for the first time, she truly believed that humanity had given her people a second chance. Princess Zyra sat in the quiet of the medical lab, staring at her hands. They looked the same, elegant, strong, marked with the royal symbols of the Zilfar. But something within them had changed. Within her, everything was changing. The human doctors had confirmed it. The treatment had not only repaired her reproductive system, it had unlocked something hidden in her genetic code, something her ancestors had long forgotten. She could feel it in every breath she took, in the energy flowing through her veins. Dr. Carter stood beside her, studying the holographic scans. His eyes were filled with wonder. "Your body is doing something we never expected, Princess," he said. "It's not just healing. It's evolving." Zyra looked at him. "What does that mean for me?" Carter hesitated before answering. "We're still analyzing, but from what we see, your cells are regenerating at a speed unlike anything we've recorded before. It's as if your body is rewriting its own limits." She absorbed his words carefully. "Then the treatment. It is not a temporary fix." Carter shook his head. "No, this is permanent. Your infertility is no longer a weakness, Princess. It's been completely erased from your biology." A wave of emotion crashed over her. For years, she had lived under the weight of her people's expectations, believing herself to be broken, unable to continue the royal lineage. But now, that burden had lifted. She was whole. The door to the lab slid open, and Commander Talon entered, his sharp eyes scanning the room. He looked at Zyra, then at Carter. "I assume the results are good news." Carter nodded. "Better than we could have ever hoped." Talon let out a slow breath. "Then we have a new problem." Zyra stood. "What is it?" "The High Council has sent a final warning," Talon said. His voice was heavy. "They have declared your alliance with the humans an act of defiance. If you do not return to Zilfar Prime immediately, they will strip you of your title." Silence filled the room. Zyra clenched her fists. She had expected resistance, but not this quickly. The council was afraid of what this new discovery meant. Carter frowned. "They're making a mistake. This treatment is a miracle. It could save your entire species." Talon's expression hardened. "They do not see it that way. To them, accepting human science is weakness. If the royal bloodline is restored through human intervention, they believe it will taint our heritage." Zyra's jaw tightened. "Foolish pride." Talon nodded. "Yes, but pride can be dangerous." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Then I have no choice. I must return." Carter looked at her in shock. "Princess, if you go back now, they might not let you leave again." "I know," she admitted. "But if I stay here, they will use my absence as proof that I have abandoned my people. They will turn my own kind against me." Talon stepped forward. "Then we leave at once. But understand this, Princess. Once we arrive on Zilfar Prime, you will not be welcomed as a savior. You will be seen as a traitor." Zyra straightened her shoulders. "Then I will make them see the truth." Hours later, Zyra's ship soared through the darkness of space, heading toward Zilfar Prime. She sat in the command chair, gazing out at the stars. Carter and a small team of human scientists had insisted on coming with her. "We need to present the evidence ourselves," Carter had said. "If the council sees the data, they have to listen." Zyra hoped he was right. Talon stood beside her, watching the navigation screen. "We will arrive soon." Zyra nodded, but her mind was already on what awaited them. Would the council listen? Would they accept the truth, or had their fear of change already doomed them? She clenched her fists. No, she would not let this discovery be buried under fear and politics. Her people deserved a future, and she would fight for it. The journey to Zilfar Prime felt longer than it actually was. Princess Zyra sat in the command chair of her ship, her gaze locked on the vast stretch of space ahead. The glowing blue planet of her people was growing larger on the navigation screen, but instead of feeling comforted by the sight of home, she felt a weight pressing down on her chest. She knew what awaited her. The High Council would not welcome her return with open arms. They would see her as a threat, a ruler tainted by human influence, a traitor who had broken the sacred traditions of the Sylphar. Dr. Carter stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "We have all the data we need to prove the treatment worked," he said. "Once the council sees this, they'll have no choice but to accept it." Zara let out a slow breath. "You do not understand my people, Doctor. The council does not act based on facts alone. They rule with tradition, with pride. To them, accepting human help is an insult to our ancestors." Carter crossed his arms. "That's ridiculous. Science isn't about pride. It's about survival." Zara gave a small smile. "To humans, yes. But to the Sylphar, it is not so simple." Commander Talon stepped forward, his eyes locked on the planetary surface as the ship began its descent. "We are approaching the capital. The High Council has ordered us to land at the royal halls." Syra nodded. "Then let us face them." The landing was tense. As the ship touched down on the marble platforms of the royal halls, armed guards surrounded them instantly. Their armor gleamed under the twin suns, their weapons raised, not in welcome, but in warning. Zara stepped forward, holding her head high. She would not show fear. She was still a princess of Sylphar. A tall, imposing figure emerged from the ranks of the guards. High Chancellor Vorin, leader of the council, studied her with cold eyes. His silver robes flowed behind him as he walked, a symbol of his authority. "Princess Syra," Vorin said, his voice like ice. "You have returned." Zira met his gaze. "Yes, Chancellor. I bring news that will change the future of our people." Vorin's lips pressed into a thin line. "You have defied the will of the council. You left without permission, sought aid from an alien race, and now you return expecting to be heard." Carter stepped forward, holding a datapad. "With all due respect, Chancellor, the princess is no longer infertile. Our treatment worked. We have the proof." Vorin's gaze snapped to Carter, his expression darkening. "You dare speak in this sacred hall, human." Talon stiffened beside Syra, ready to defend her if necessary, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "I did what was necessary," Syra said firmly. "Our bloodline was dying. Our people were facing extinction. I found a way to save us." Vorin's eyes narrowed. "At what cost? You carry human corruption within you now. You have tainted the purity of the royal line." Syra's temper flared. "Purity? What good is purity if we perish? If we do not adapt, we will die, Chancellor. The future of our race depends on evolution." The council members murmured amongst themselves, some uncertain, others angry. Vorin, however, remained unmoved. "You believe yourself a savior, but you have betrayed the very foundation of our people." Syra stepped forward, placing a hand over her chest. "Then look at me, Chancellor. Look at what I have become, not weaker, but stronger. I have not lost what it means to be Sylphar. I have gained something greater." She turned to the council members. "You fear change, but change is the only reason we are still standing today. Our ancestors once left their dying world to find this planet. They adapted, they survived. And now we must do the same." For the first time, a few of the council members looked uncertain. Carter, sensing the shift, took another step forward. "The princess is living proof that the treatment works. With this knowledge, your entire race could be saved. No more struggling for survival. No more lost generations." Silence fell over the hall. Then, from behind the council members, a new voice spoke. "I believe she speaks the truth." An elderly council member, one of the oldest among them, stepped forward. His name was Councillor Raylis, a respected figure whose wisdom had guided the Sylphar for decades. "I have lived long enough to see our species decline," Raylis said. "I have watched as we struggled to hold on to the past, refusing to accept the future. But now, the future stands before us." He turned to Syra, his sharp eyes studying her. "Princess, you are not weak. You are the next step in our evolution. Murmurs spread through the council. Some still looked unconvinced, but doubt had taken root. Voron's face twisted in frustration. You would risk everything for this experiment. Raylis nodded. I would risk everything for hope. Zyra took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. She turned to the council. I do not ask you to accept this blindly. I only ask you to see what is before you. Let the doctors show you the evidence. Let us test this on others who wish for a chance at life. The council remained silent, locked in deep thought. Finally, Voron exhaled sharply. Very well. Zyra's heart pounded. We will review the evidence, Voron said grudgingly, and we will decide whether this change is to be accepted. It was not a full victory, but it was a chance. Zyra turned to Carter and Talon. They exchanged a glance, knowing this battle was far from over. But for the first time, there was a crack in the wall of tradition, and through that crack, hope had begun to shine. The journey to Zilfar Prime felt longer than it actually was. Princess Zyra sat in the command chair of her ship, her gaze locked on the vast stretch of space ahead. The glowing blue planet of her people was growing larger on the navigation screen, but instead of feeling comforted by the sight of home, she felt a weight pressing down on her chest. She knew what awaited her. The High Council would not welcome her return with open arms. They would see her as a threat, a ruler tainted by human influence, a traitor who had broken the sacred traditions of the Zilfar. Dr. Carter stood beside her, his expression unreadable. We have all the data we need to prove the treatment worked, he said. Once the council sees this, they'll have no choice but to accept it. Zyra let out a slow breath. You do not understand my people, Doctor. The council does not act based on facts alone. They rule with tradition, with pride. To them, accepting human help is an insult to our ancestors. Carter crossed his arms. That's ridiculous. Science isn't about pride. It's about survival. Zyra gave a small smile. To humans, yes. But to the Zilfar, it is not so simple. Commander Talon stepped forward, his eyes locked on the planetary surface as the ship began its descent. We are approaching the capital. The High Council has ordered us to land at the royal halls. Zyra nodded. Then let us face them. The landing was tense. As the ship touched down on the marble platforms of the royal halls, armed guards surrounded them instantly. Their armor gleamed under the twin suns, their weapons raised, not in welcome, but in mourning. Zyra stepped forward, holding her head high. She would not show fear. She was still a princess of Zilfar. A tall, imposing figure emerged from the ranks of the guards. High Chancellor Voron, leader of the council, studied her with cold eyes. His silver robes flowed behind him as he walked, a symbol of his authority. Princess Zyra, Voron said, his voice like ice. You have returned. Zyra met his gaze. Yes, Chancellor, I bring news that will change the future of our people. Voron's lips pressed into a thin line. You have defied the will of the council. You left without permission, sought aid from an alien race, and now you return expecting to be heard. Carter stepped forward, holding a datapad. With all due respect, Chancellor, the princess is no longer infertile. Our treatment worked. We have the proof. Voron's gaze snapped to Carter, his expression darkening. You dare speak in this sacred hall, human. Talon stiffened beside Zyra, ready to defend her if necessary, but she raised a hand, stopping him. I did what was necessary, Zyra said firmly. Our bloodline was dying. Our people were facing extinction. I found a way to save us. Voron's eyes narrowed. At what cost? You carry human corruption within you now. You have tainted the purity of the royal line. Zyra's temper flared. Purity. What good is purity if we perish? If we do not adapt, we will die, Chancellor. The future of our race depends on evolution. The council members murmured amongst themselves, some uncertain, others angry. Voron, however, remained unmoved. You believe yourself a savior, but you have betrayed the very foundation of our people. Zaira stepped forward, placing a hand over her chest. Then look at me, Chancellor. Look at what I have become. Not weaker, but stronger. I have not lost what it means to be Zilfar. I have gained something greater. She turned to the council members. You fear change. But change is the only reason we are still standing today. Our ancestors once left their dying world to find this planet. They adapted, they survived. And now we must do the same. For the first time, a few of the council members looked uncertain. Carter, sensing the shift, took another step forward. The princess is living proof that the treatment works. With this knowledge, your entire race could be saved. No more struggling for survival. No more lost generations. Silence fell over the hall. Then, from behind the council members, a new voice spoke. I believe she speaks the truth. An elderly council member, one of the oldest among them, stepped forward. His name was Councillor Raylis, a respected figure whose wisdom had guided the Zilfar for decades. I have lived long enough to see our species decline, Raylis said. I have watched as we struggle to hold on to the past, refusing to accept the future. But now, the future stands before us. He turned to Xyra, his sharp eyes studying her. Princess, you are not weak. You are the next step in our evolution. Murmurs spread through the council. Some still looked unconvinced, but doubt had taken root. Voron's face twisted in frustration. You would risk everything for this experiment. Raylis nodded. I would risk everything for hope. Xyra took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. She turned to the council. I do not ask you to accept this blindly. I only ask you to see what is before you. Let the doctors show you the evidence. Let us test this on others who wish for a chance at life. The council remained silent, locked in deep thought. Finally, Voron exhaled sharply. Very well. Xyra's heart pounded. We will review the evidence, Voron said grudgingly, and we will decide whether this change is to be accepted. It was not a full victory, but it was a chance. Xyra turned to Carter and Talon. They exchanged a glance, knowing this battle was far from over. But for the first time, there was a crack in the wall of tradition, and through that crack, hope had begun to shine. The air inside the royal halls was tense. Princess Xyra stood before the High Council, her posture unwavering, but her heart pounded in her chest. The fate of her people rested on this moment. For hours, the council had debated. Some feared the consequences of accepting human science, while others saw the undeniable truth. Zilfar was dying, and this was their only chance at survival. Chancellor Voron, who had opposed her from the beginning, rose from his seat. His sharp gaze swept across the chamber before settling on Xyra. The council has reached a decision, he announced. A heavy silence filled the room. Xyra held her breath. Voron's jaw tightened, but then he spoke words she never expected to hear. We will allow further testing of this treatment. Murmurs erupted in the hall. Some were relieved, others outraged. Xyra felt a surge of hope. Then you accept that this could save our people. Voron lifted a hand, silencing the voices around him. I still do not trust the humans, he admitted, but I cannot deny what is before us. Your condition has been reversed. If this treatment can be replicated safely, then we must consider its value. Councillor Raylis, who had been one of Xyra's few allies, nodded in approval. This is the first step toward a future where our species will not face extinction. Dr. Carter exhaled in relief, but he knew the battle was far from over. We'll begin careful testing immediately, he said. Volunteers will be given the treatment under strict monitoring. Voron frowned. And if it fails? Xyra met his gaze firmly. Then we will find another way. But we cannot afford to do nothing. Voron hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. So be it. The decision had been made. Days later, the first volunteers. Word spread quickly across Zilfar Prime. Many still feared the human treatment, but others, especially those who had lost hope of ever having children, began to come forward. The first volunteer was a Ziltharian woman named Lorana. She had tried for years to conceive, but had been told it was impossible. She was nervous but determined as she lay on the medical table in the research facility. Carter and his team worked carefully, administering the same treatment that had healed Xyra. For hours, they monitored her vitals, watching closely for any side effects. Then, something incredible happened. Lorana's body responded to the treatment even faster than Xyra's had. Her cells adapted, repairing the damage within her reproductive system at an astonishing rate. Carter's eyes widened as he checked the readings. This is beyond anything we expected. Xyra, who had been watching closely, stepped forward. "What do you mean?" Carter turned to her, his voice filled with awe. "Her body isn't just healing, it's improving, just like yours did." Xyra exchanged a glance with Talon. "Then this is not just a cure." "No," Carter said. "This is evolution." For the first time in centuries, hope had truly returned to the Zilfar. The High Council's final verdict. A week later, Xyra and Carter once again stood before the High Council. This time, they did not come with theories or promises. They came with proof. Lorana, the first volunteer, stood beside them. Her transformation was undeniable. She looked stronger, healthier, alive in a way she had never been before. Counselor Rayla stepped forward, studying her carefully. "And you feel no pain?" Lorana smiled. "None. I feel better than I ever have." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Even Vorin seemed at a loss for words. Xyra seized the moment. "This is no longer a question of whether the treatment works. It does. The only question that remains is whether we will embrace it or let our people fade into history." Vorin let out a slow breath. "This decision will change everything." Xyra nodded. "Yes, but change is necessary." A long silence followed. Then, at last, Vorin gave a slow, reluctant nod. "The treatment will be made available to those who seek it," he declared. The decision was final. The future of Zilfar had been rewritten. A new beginning. As Xyra walked out of the council chambers, she looked up at the sky of her homeworld. The twin suns shone brightly, as if celebrating this moment of victory. Carter stood beside her. "I still can't believe they agreed." Xyra smiled. "Neither can I." But the truth was too great to ignore. Talon, ever the warrior, folded his arms. "This is just the beginning. Many will resist, and there will be challenges ahead." Xyra nodded. "Yes, but now we have something we never had before." Carter raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" She turned to face him, her golden eyes filled with determination. A future. And for the first time in her life, she knew that future was bright.